In this video, I'm going to show you 20 Skyrim tricks that are so good that they make you feel like you're cheating, but technically you're not. I'll start with things that you can do early in the game and then slowly progress towards more advanced, higher impact tricks for the mid and late game. So by the end of the video, your character is going to be pretty damn broken. Firstly, let's talk about how to get an infinite source of free arrows. To do this, you simply need to find a guard practicing archery, and a guaranteed spot for this is in the castle courtyard in Solitude. Then you need to simply stand by the target that the guard's firing at and loot the arrows as they land. Simple. However, you can really take this trick to the next level a bit later in your playthrough by making the guard produce infinite high quality arrows. To pull this off, you're going to need to pickpocket the guard's existing arrows. You're probably going to need to wait for the guard to return to the barracks at night to pull this off, as it's going to be pretty hard to do in the middle of the courtyard. Then you need to replace them with a single arrow of the type you want to duplicate, for example a Daedric or Dragonbone arrow. Then, when the guard resumes practice, every shot will use that single arrow, but it will produce infinite copies of it that will stick into the target, and then of course you can loot them. The reason I say you need to do this later in your playthrough is that you'll need the misdirection perk in order to be able to steal the guard's equipped arrows without alerting them. And this perk requires you to have 70 skill in pickpocket. But either way, this basically gives you a magic arrow dispenser throwing out unlimited arrows, which trivializes ammo management early on, and it saves you a fortune on expensive arrows later in the game. Whilst on the subject of archery, if you complete a very quick quest in Riverwood early in the game, then you can get archery training completely free of charge. All you need to do is speak to Faendal in Riverwood in order to start his love letter quest, and then if you resolve the quest in his favour, he will become your follower. The trick here is that Faendal is also a common archery trainer, therefore you can pay him to level up your archery skill and then immediately access his inventory due to his status as your follower and take the gold straight back. You can train 5 skill points in archery for every character level you gain until you hit 50 skill in archery, which is a huge boost to your power with a bow during the early game. And of course, it's completely free of charge. Just be aware that if you're modding, then the unofficial Skyrim patch does remove your ability to do this. Another strong early game power boost, which actually remains relevant for the entire game, is taking advantage of vegetable soup in order to give yourself unlimited power attacks. Basically, this easy to craft recipe grants you 1 point of stamina per second for 720 seconds. Now, technically, you only need 1 point of stamina to perform a heavy attack, even if it doesn't look that way on the interface. And what this soup does is basically never lets you reach 0 stamina, it just keeps ticking you back up to 1 stamina. So while it might look like you've run out of stamina, you'll find that after using vegetable soup, you can actually power attack infinitely. This is massively overpowered, especially for melee builds early in the game, and you can get 3 of the 4 ingredients simply by looting the farms outside of Whiterun. The only difficult one to get hold of is actually tomatoes, believe it or not, as they don't actually grow anywhere, and you'll need to find them at random, so be sure to save them up for vegetable soup. Okay, so this one does come pretty close to cheating, but technically it's an exploit, not a cheat. In my view, to properly cheat, you need to open up the console or install third-party software. Though to be fair, you might totally disagree with that and say that any exploit is cheating, and that's a fair enough opinion to hold too. But anyway, this little trick allows you to reach 100 sneak before you even leave the tutorial. Basically, sneak attacks give a lot of experience towards your sneak skill. And during the tutorial, you actually can sneak up behind either Ralof or Hadvar, Ralof in this example, and continuously sneak attack them without them having any kind of reaction, which, as you can see, just levels your sneak insanely fast. Yes, it is incredibly lame, and doing it all the way to 100 isn't really worth it in my opinion, but I can't deny that getting a little bit of sneak skill early on can make quite a big difference to your playthrough if you want to play a thief style build. Now, this next stealth-related trick isn't really a trick at all, it's just a normal game mechanic, but a lot of people seem to miss it, and that's the ability to poison someone using pickpocket, which allows you to kill an enemy basically in broad daylight without drawing any aggression or bounty. All you need is to have the poisoned perk unlocked, which you can get at pickpocket level 40. Then you simply need to pickpocket someone, drop a lethal poison in their inventory, and for some mad reason they will then decide to inexplicably drink it and just drop dead in the middle of the street. Like I said, it's an intended game mechanic, but it feels like a trick because it's pretty overpowered. It allows you to just go and assassinate someone with no repercussions, as long as you remain hidden while pickpocketing, of course. If you get caught inserting the poison, then yes, you will trigger a response. Now, I mentioned getting Sneak to level 100 really easily, but there's also a few other skills that you can do the same thing with. For example, Illusion can be leveled extremely quickly just by spamming the Muffle spell, which you can buy from Farengar in Whiterun, found in Dragon's Reach Keep. It's a low-level spell that you can literally spam whilst walking between quest objectives to get your Illusion skill up to level 100 pretty damn quickly, which otherwise is actually quite a difficult skill to level. If you do decide to go all the way to 100 Illusion, by the way, then make sure you don't miss out on the Mayhem spell, which is both hilarious to watch and also pretty damn overpowered in a tight space. Basically, Mayhem is a master level illusion spell that causes every enemy in a 250-foot radius to go berserk and all start attacking each other. Most people never get to witness it though, as it's rare to get illusion to 100 without using some sort of power leveling technique like the one I just explained. It's a bit of an investment, as you do need to complete the illusion ritual quest, which unlocks at illusion level 100, but once you do, you unlock the ability to buy the Mayhem spell tome from Drevis Nelleran in the College of Winterhold. I think it's well worth doing though, especially if you get 100 illusion early on from using the illusion leveling trick. And the reason I say it feels like cheating is because you can use it to turn a room full of enemies into a single weakened opponent, as they're the last one standing, and then you can just go and finish them off Mortal Kombat style. Speaking of quick leveling tricks, it's pretty much the same deal with Alteration as it is with Illusion, except this time you're going to do it using the Mage Light spell, also available from Farengar. And this time you're going to be doing something a little weird when you cast it. Basically, you're going to go outside the main gate of Solitude and then you're going to cast Mage Light at this specific mountain. This is due to the fact that the further the spell travels, the more XP you get, but it also can't travel too far, and that's why this mountain is used specifically. I know, very, very weird, but it works as you can see here, and you'll get Alteration to 100 extremely fast using this technique. A word of warning about these methods though, many of Skyrim's enemies do scale to your level, at least to some extent, and by maxing out Illusion and Alteration, you're going to get to a pretty high level without having any direct combat skills, which means you're going to struggle to deal with the scaled up enemies. So I'd suggest using these techniques to catch up on a few levels rather than power leveling to 100. But that's your call, and Alteration and Illusion are quite annoying to level organically. Typically you do need to use some sort of spell spamming method if you don't want them to fall behind your other skills. Speaking of time-saving techniques, one thing that can be particularly frustrating in Skyrim is becoming over-encumbered from too much loot, and then having to crawl around at a snail's pace and being completely blocked from fast travelling. However, if you get hold of a horse, which you can get for 1,000 gold at the Whiterun stables, and there are some instances in which you can even get one for free, then you can get around this issue, as if you mount your horse, you'll be able to fast travel even when encumbered. So always park your horse outside of the dungeon that you're clearing out, so that you can easily get back to the city and cash in that extra gold. Of course, you can't ride your horse in the dungeon itself, so I'd also recommend having some fortified carry potions to help you get out at normal speed, rather than having to wade your way through treacle. Another quick trick for traversal is using the Become Ethereal shout to temporarily negate fall damage, which basically allows you to take shortcuts by leaping off cliffs rather than taking the slow climb down. You won't be using it constantly, and it's not a game-breaking trick like some of the ones we're going to be getting to in a moment, but it's still worth knowing about, as it can shave a few minutes off of frustratingly having to navigate your way down a mountain every so often. Also, the first word of the shout is discovered in Ustengrav during the main quest, so you don't exactly have to go out of your way to get it. Word of warning though, make sure you use the shout before you jump, as you can't actually cast it in mid-air, as I was reminded of when recording this video after having not used the trick for a while. This next trick is one of my favourites to do as early as possible when playing any archery based build. Basically, it lets you wield the equivalent of a Daedric bow very early in the game, which is just incredibly overpowered. I am of course talking about the Bound Bow spell, which you can find at Fort Amel in the fort's prison area, as you can see in the footage I'm showing right now. The main obstacle here is that you need 50 conjuration skill to be able to cast the spell in the first place, which, bonus tip, you can do by spamming Soul Trap on an already dead enemy. Then, as a result, you'll be able to infinitely summon a spectral bow with 100 bound arrows. That, if you unlock the Mystic Binding perk in the Conjuration skill tree, will be on par with a Daedric quality bow. By the way, the Mystic Binding perk only requires 20 skill in Conjuration, so you can get it naturally on your way to reaching skill level 50 to be able to learn Bound Bow in the first place. The result being that you end up wielding an extremely overpowered late game bow within the early hours of your playthrough, and you're just going to be one-shotting enemies from stealth all day long. Another trick that makes you feel borderline unkillable in combat is taking advantage of stagger locking opponents using dual cast destruction spells. Basically, at skill level 40 destruction magic, you can unlock a perk called Impact, and that perk will make the majority of your destruction spells stagger your opponent when dual casting. This can get stupidly broken if set up correctly, as any dual cast projectile, so firebolts, ice spikes, lightning bolts, will be guaranteed to stagger the target on hit, making them utterly unable to respond. I say if set up correctly, as the only caveat here is that whether an enemy is staggered or not is dependent on the damage dealt, so large enemies such as dragons will only be staggered if you're doing a sufficient amount of damage, but you can realistically stunlock even dragons and giants with this trick if you're putting out enough damage, as you can see in the footage right now. It feels like this combo basically breaks the AI, but is very much intended behavior, despite the fact that it feels like it should be cheating. Another very powerful ability that can trivialize fights is the Summon Dremora ability that's tied to the Sanguine Rose Staff, which you can get hold of by completing Sanguine's Daedric quest, which by the way can be started at level 14, and I won't give spoilers, but it's actually a really fun quest to do. Anyway, this staff will give you the ability to summon a powerful Dremora for 60 seconds, who has some pretty hefty armor and a decent health pool. And summoning this Dremora can really trivialize fights, as you can just let them stand up front taking all the damage whilst you sit safely shooting arrows or casting spells from range. The reason it feels like cheating is that if you do it as soon as possible at level 14, the staff gives you access to a level 75 conjuration spell without you having to put any focus into that skill tree, which means all of the skill experience up to level 14 can be spent elsewhere. So you're basically getting the benefits of being overpowered in 2 different skill trees very early in the game, and you wouldn't otherwise be able to do this. For example, you could hard focus on archery for all of your skill XP and your perk points and use the training trick that I mentioned earlier in the video, and then you could combine this with the Sanguine Rose to make yourself insanely powerful during the early to mid game. Anyway, moving on to trick number 13. Now, stealth builds already deal huge damage, but this trick takes them to the next level and allows you to hit for 30 times damage when attacking with daggers from stealth, which is enough to one-shot even dragons and giants in the right circumstances. Here's how it works, and it's very simple. Firstly, you need to get your sneak to level 50 and unlock the Assassin's Blade perk in the sneak perk tree. This will boost your dagger sneak attacks to 15 times normal damage, which is already pretty great. But the kicker is, if you get hold of a pair of shrouded gloves, which you can get by joining the Dark Brotherhood, they will double your backstab damage. Now the beauty in this is that these effects stack, so the gloves, providing you're attacking from behind, will double the 15 times multiplier from the Assassin's Blade perk, giving you a total of 30 times damage. And with a half decent dagger, this is going to drop almost any enemy in a single hit. It genuinely feels like you've just activated God mode. And again, this isn't any kind of exploit, it is a totally intentional game mechanic. Now, if you're less about sneaky assassinations and more about spell slinging, then here's how to cast as many spells as you can eat without ever running out of mana. You won't have any downtime at all, and you'll never have to take a single magicka potion ever again. Basically, with the right gear setup, you can make any school of magic completely free to cast, though it does require quite a bit of investment, so this is more of a mid to late game trick. Here's how you do it. Firstly, you need to raise your enchanting skill all the way to level 100 and ensure that you invest 5 perk points into the enchanter perk, 1 point into the Insightful Enchanter perk, and also 1 point into the Extra Effect perk, because that's going to allow you to reduce the cost of 2 schools of magic to 0 with a single set of equipment. The reason you need 100 enchanting, by the way, is firstly so that you can guarantee the maximum potency of the enchantment, but also because you can't unlock the Extra Effect perk until skill level 100. But it's also worth saying that you can still use this trick to drastically reduce the mana cost of your spells prior to hitting 100 enchanting. Once you achieve 100 enchanting and unlock the correct perks, then all you need to do is craft or gather 4 pieces of gear, a helmet, chest piece, ring and necklace, and then enchant each of these 4 pieces with the Fortify 25% effect for the school of magic you want to become free to cast, like Fortify Destruction, for example. And of course, if you have the Extra Effect perk, you can add 2 schools of magic. Then you simply throw all that gear on and you have a 100% spell cost reduction for that school or 2 schools of magic. The reason this feels like cheating is because magicka is clearly intended to be a limited resource, and this whole setup removes that system entirely, allowing you to become an unstoppable tempest of magical damage. And at that point, there are very few enemies in the game who are going to be able to withstand you. Speaking of which, next up is the infamous alchemy and enchanting crafting loop. And there's no denying that this one is an exploit. And it allows you to create weapons and armor that just feel totally broken. Basically, what you need to do is raise your alchemy and enchanting to as high a level as you can, ideally 100. Then you need to enchant 4 items, helmet, gloves, ring and necklace, with the Fortify Alchemy enchantment. Next, you're going to need to equip that gear and use those bonuses to brew a Fortify Enchanting Potion. You then drink the Fortify Enchanting Potion and you craft an even stronger set of Fortify Alchemy gear because of the effects that you've been given by that potion. Then you simply need to repeat this process until you cap out and can no longer increase the potency of your Fortify Alchemy enchantment on your gear. If you have 100 skill in both enchanting and alchemy, I believe this is around 33 to 34%, without making things a lot more complicated or getting glitches involved. This Fortify Alchemy gear should then allow you to create Fortify Smithing and Fortify Enchanting potions with a 35% potency, which means you can drink these potions and then craft, upgrade and enchant some insanely powerful gear that will make beating the game on even the highest difficulties feel like a bit of a breeze. People have managed to push these numbers even higher, but that's beyond the scope of this video and it'll require a bit more extensive research on your part, if you're interested. Another clever combination that offers your character a powerful permanent buff is pairing Vampirism with the Necromage perk. Basically, what you need to do is become a vampire, either via Serana or by contracting the disease from a random vampire. If you want more detail on that, I'll link a vampirism guide in the description down below. And then secondly, you need to get your restoration skill to level 70 in order to unlock the Necromage perk. Now, what this perk does is boost all spells against undead, and since vampires count as undead, and you are at this point a vampire, then any magical effect on you will become 25% stronger. And this doesn't just cover the spells that you cast on yourself, it also includes enchantments, potion effects, and even standing stone bonuses. For example, a 40% archery ring becomes 50%, the Atronach stone's 50% spell absorption becomes 62.5%, and every single potion you use will have increased potency and duration as well. As you can imagine, this gets stupidly strong once you start stacking up all of these different types of magical buffs in the game, and it probably should have been removed, but it wasn't, and here we are. Another trick that feels like it shouldn't have made it into Skyrim's final release is the ability to become 100% immune to spell damage, which again is just flat out busted. It's not actually that hard to do either, and it just builds on the previous tip. All you need to do is become a Necromage vampire, as I just explained. Then you need to activate the Atronach Standing Stone for 50% spell absorption. Then take the Atronach perk from the Alteration skill tree for a further 30% spell absorption. Your Necromage buff will then increase each of these bonuses to the point that you have a grand total of 100% spell absorption, which means you're now immune to magical damage. Just ridiculous really, but I never said we were playing fair with this video, just that we're technically not cheating, just exploiting. Quite heavily in some cases. One thing you do need to remember with this particular trick is that you need to make sure that you become a necromage first before you activate the Atronach stone or unlock the perk, otherwise the bonuses won't apply. And yeah, do that and you have basically erased an entire damage type from the game, and you can laugh in the face of a fire-breathing dragon. Just don't get close enough for him to take a swipe at you. Tip number 19 is a little more pedestrian, let's say, before we go into something that's totally broken again to finish off. But I've added it here because it's another one that's really powerful when you stack it on top of the necromage trick. Basically, by default, you can only get one standing stone buff. However, there is an item in the game that will allow you to have two. This is called the Ethereal Crown. And to get a hold of it, you're going to need to complete the Lost to the Ages quest as part of the Dawnguard DLC. I'd suggest looking up a guide, as there's actually 3 possible rewards, and there's too much detail to go into right now. However, once you've completed the quest and received the Ethereal Crown as your reward, then all you need to do is equip it, activate a buff from any standing stone, then, while the crown is still equipped, activate a second buff from a different standing stone, and the crown will automatically retain the first buff, resulting in you benefiting from both. It opens up a whole world of opportunity for different synergies and creative playstyles, and combined with the Necromage Vampire trick, you can see how you start to get into the realm of becoming pretty unstoppable. And finally, one last sneaky little trick that will allow you to put out insane levels of damage lies in how Stelrim weapons interact with the Chaos Damage enchantment. Basically, Stelrim weapons by default boost frost-based enchantments by 25%, but for whatever reason, when it comes to Chaos Damage, which applies fire, frost and shock damage, all of these damage types are boosted when applied to a Stelrim weapon. Then, if you add the augmented flame, frost and shock perks from the destruction tree, which individually boost the damage of each of these elements, you end up with a pretty absurd multiplier that results in enemies simply melting in front of you, as you can see with me fighting the guards, which by the way is on a pretty high difficulty setting. It's almost comical, and on top of that, if you have enchanting level 100, you can even imply a second enchantment that will also benefit from this multiplier in order to make your weapon just completely broken. The most straightforward way to get hold of a Chaos enchantment is by looting and disenchanting the Champion's Cudgel, which you get by looting General Falk's Carrius at the end of the March of the Dead quest in Solstheim. And that's pretty much it. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, remember to like and subscribe for more RPG content, and I look forward to seeing you in the next one.